Hi, I'm RC Jim, and here we are ready to continue on with our repair of the Black Horse Super Air. Progressing really well, but I got some really neat ideas. This is getting to be a lot of fun. I'm coming up with some really strange and weird ideas. Let me just share you a couple of those right now. Okay, the first idea has to do with battery replacement. I've been going back and forth with this a fair bit. But first off, I think we'll be able to just simply have it set on the floor in there. And yes, it does fit in nicely. We can get her in there, move it back and forth, and get it back out. No worries at all. As far as the ESC, you know, I was thinking about making a separate compartment on the floor, but I like the weight of the battery down low. And so I got to thinking about this. And I'm thinking I can just put it along the side. So it's going to go along the side, something like this. And I've got a little bit extra width on these vertical pieces going up there, and a bit to clean up on one of them. So I'm going to cut those down a bit. I'm going to then put a strap down through the floor down here, hooked to a little block up on the top to hold it on the side, because I can't really use double stick tape or anything like that to hold it there. And I want to keep it out of the way of the battery. So we'll have a little strap that comes up that ties off up here. So a hole in the floor with a knot behind the hole, coming up to a block with a hole in it up here to where we can tie it off to strap that over to the side. And with that over to the side, the battery will still fit in nicely right next to it. Okay, so that's going to work out fine. With the battery, where I'm not putting in a separate floor for it, I think I'll be able to put battery straps through these holes and just strap it down to this piece right here. So I think that's going to be fine. Next thing has to do with the cowl top cover. And, you know, I mentioned here that I didn't leave enough clearance for it to be able to hinge back like this. Okay, well, I got thinking about it. I can just simply trim off the corners, glue these corners back in there to where it comes up like this and back in like that. I'll put in, of course, I'll have a little mini bulkhead in here, just a panel there on each end. And I'll have a couple pins that come out there to go into this bulkhead up here. And then I'm going to have a spring pin latch here at the back. Now I got looking for a spring pin latch on the net, couldn't find anything that actually suits. So I got thinking, well, okay, I'll take apart a pen and get the spring out of the pen. And then I got thinking, hey, I could even use the barrel of the pen, you know, to be part of the thing. But I backed off from that crazy idea. And instead, I came up with one of my ingenious so-called engineering designs, where I'm going to make this little box out of some plywood and some little blocks. I'm going to have a piece of piano wire inside it. The piano wire is going to have this little square piece of aluminium soldered onto it. Okay, so that's going to get soldered onto it to hold the spring. And there'll be where it's get up right side up for you. Up at this end up here is where you'll have the 90-degree bend in the piano wire that'll come up and come out of the plane, so we can push back on it. We got the spring in the middle there. We've got the square soldered on piece of aluminium there on one side of the spring, and then it pushes on the little box on the end of the box on this end of the spring, so you can pull that back and the pin will retract. Looks to me like about 24 millimeters for the initial compression on the spring. So you want a little bit of compression at the start, so having that at 24 millimeters. And then We could easily go another 6 millimeters, and even a lot more than that if you wanted to, but another 6 millimeters would be fine to pull back on it, and that spring is going to handle that quite nicely. So anyway, then as far as putting it in there, I'll be making that little box, and initially I was going to just sand the top of it to keep the things level with the world. But I got thinking about it, and there's nothing to keep me. You know, we got a ridge stringer in there that we need to dodge, and that goes up through here too. But we'll just go to the side of that, which won't be a problem. I'll just have it go flat up against the balsa sheathing up there, the balsa skin. It can be a little bit on an angle, a little bit off-centered with the thing up there. And then, of course, I've already got this beautifully finished off with this piece of balsa in there, which is extra thick, and that's going to get in the way. So I'm going to have to cut out a piece of that to provide clearance for it. But that will allow me a place to add glue and various things to make sure I've got it glued in there nicely. And so that'll give me a pin hinge over here. This is going to be nice and rigid with these little panels put in there and there. The panels, being at that sort of height, are going to clear the battery and anything else that might be in there, so that's not going to be an issue. And with these cutouts here, I'll be able to hinge it back, put the pins in there, go down here, have it latch there. That's going to hold it just fine. Pins where my thumbs are and where this finger is, that'll hold it in place just fine. So that's the plans with regard to that. Yeah, who knows what else we're going to come up with, but we'll have a few other bits and pieces to do along the way. And probably with this video, we'll just stick to those things, and then perhaps we can have the fuselage finished at that time and proceed on to the wing, which is another main job. So just watch and enjoy. And as you have ideas about what we're doing, share them. You know, put them in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. I just discovered something that many of you probably already knew. Solder doesn't take very well to aluminium. I would have thought that would have been just fine, but boy, that solder didn't like to stick on that at all. So I found a little brass, sort of a threaded collar sort of a thing. Not a collar, and actually you could use an ordinary collar on there, couldn't you? Just one of those ones with a grub screw in the side of it. But anyway, I soldered on this little brass thingy. It's okay that it's not square. The square was the idea of, for the end where it's got the handle on it, to keep it upright, but the hole up at the top is going to keep it upright, so that's going to be fine. So anyway, now we got a little springy thingy. Okay, the excitement continues. So we've cut 2 little blocks. We tried to shoot for 8 by 8 millimeters. But anyway, I just used little balsa blocks in there. And as far as the distance, you want it to where you got some tension on it with the thing in there. And of course we'll have a washer in here on the end as well. But then the ability to pull a decent distance. Okay, so that's the general idea. It's fun working with these little things as far as fiddly little bits. So the idea is to get things positioned where we want them, and then I'll zap this onto the other piece, and we'll kind of have a 3-sided box. It still gives us access to what's inside. Okay, this is greaseless or baking paper. So I'll cut this cover piece off after I get the thing glued on there. Okay, I'll just add some to the inside. Of Clean that up a little bit. Okay, and now I'll trim off the end. Well, we've made our little box here. Cut off the end, cleaned it up all around, marked diagonal crisscross across there to mark the center of where to drill. So now we'll drill in the holes and then be prepared to get our spring in place. Now it's time to cut off the end here so that we can get the thing in all the way. We'll be pressing in and then putting it in there. According to my plan here, we need 10 millimeters going out there. I'll make it a little bit longer. We can always shorten it later. Let's see how far we think we can get. Oh yeah, we can get well out there. So something like that is 11.5. So I'll go a tiny bit more than that. Well, here's our completed pin latch. Well, completed other than the right angle bend and the piano wire down at this end. But yeah, we can pull it back and all. I did make some further changes to what we had a minute ago. I replaced the balsa end pieces with pine. So that's solid pine to just make it a bit stronger and a bit more durable. You know, we don't want this thing wearing out over time. So I think that's going to do the job quite well. So our next thing to do is to cut out part of this plug that we put in here so that we can fit the latch underneath there. Then we'll locate the place for the slot. The windscreen comes up to here, so it needs to be on this side of that. So with this being in there, yeah, it doesn't really give us any room, does it? That's interesting. Yeah, okay, we'll work through that one. Okay, progress report on the installation. We've cut out that part of the plug there. Done my best to try and clear the stuff out from underneath it and inspected it from below. We've got our little mechanism here. I've discovered that we can put the windscreen on just a little bit farther back. This windscreen can just nicely miss these things here and still have room for our release. So that is going to be fine. That's given that we can get this all the way up there, and that's the next issue, is that I'm using a little tiny file to put a notch in there for this wire. And to fit it in there, we have to put it in there this way at the moment, which is backwards, but unless it's about the same, should be 6 mil, yeah. Okay, so they're the same. So when I get this up in there and I sight down in here, I've got a little bit of a gap there. So I was thinking, oh, something's holding it up. When I push it farther back, I can get it pretty well right up there. So I'm trying to figure out what's keeping it from going up all the way. We can have it all the way forward and have it in a position like that. That's pretty close, so it'll probably be all right. Well, success at last. We've got our little mechanism in there. Yeah, it pulls the pin back for being able to latch the hatch. Turns out this is a little bit farther forward than what I had originally marked out there. So we can actually get by with it only going back about that far. So I can actually bring the canopy a tiny bit closer. Well, we've got more of the fiddly sort of work today. So first off, I've patched in that little piece there. And of course we'll be able to use some filler and whatever to sand it off nicely later on. Then where I've marked the corners on these things, I got one cut off. And what I did in doing that is I actually put it on this can and used the lid to support it while I cut. And I just followed the line carefully. So now what we're going to do is we're going to zap it in place And it's going to be a little bit tricky, as in a lot of stuff that we do, in that right now it's not wanting to perfectly conform to the shape that I want, but I can get this bit down here in the corner. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zap that in place. Okay, so that's in place. This is looking good here. So I'm going to just put a little pressure on it and zap that on. Okay, and that brings us up to the top. And I'll get the top edge, and this one will be an easy one to glue my fingers to it. Anytime you're in close proximity to where that thin zap is going, it likes to travel everywhere. Sorry if I'm messing up your picture here, but I want to be able to get my fingers on that bit too. So that looks pretty good to me. I can't really do much with that anyway. Oops, yeah, that's all right. That was okay. So that's all very nice there now. So just get the bits that we didn't get. Probably would have been good to put the plane right side up. So now we'll cut off the next corner using our same technique, supporting it with a can, running the knife along there. One thing I might also note with regard to doing this is that I've glued cracks together and stuff, and anytime you come to the glue, the knife is going to want to do weird things, the hobby knife. So just go really slow and watch it carefully and stay on the line, and you should be okay. So we've now got our hatch to where we should be able to stick it in up there and bring it down and have nothing interfering. So the next thing to do is to make some little bulkhead pieces to go into the top to hold that rigid, and then make our pins to go into this end of it over here. We've got the top of a bulkhead there that the pins can go into. Okay, junk mail is good for some things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have this bit of cardstock here set down near the bottom, and I'm going to trace around the edge of it. And this, of course, is on the outside of the skin, so it's going to be shorter than that on the inside, but it'll give us a pretty good idea of what we need. And then as we put it in place, we will be checking the width to make sure the width is constant. Okay, so this is the front here, and that's the front piece. Okay. It's interesting how it's not an even radius going around. I think the plane has been through a few stresses and strains and whatever. And who knows what happened in terms of the build. But it's the same as what's up there, so we'll call that good. Okay, so it's going to go that way into there, and with a tiny bit less of a radius. Okay, we've got a notch out for these little guys, and what I did is I just free-handed sketched the thickness of the material. So this is going to be right down there. Okay, so I'm matching up the little marks that I put there with those, and trying to do something similar over here. Okay, so that's pretty close there. This one goes a little bit wider as it comes down, starts skinny, and goes up a bit. Okay, and that one does the same sort of thing. Okay, for this one here, making sure I got the edge of it marked there. This is where that is. Just made just enough of a mark to where I can see it. And this is going to start very skinny and go wider. Yeah, these things are basically vertical on the side. Okay, and then how deep to go with that? Okay, about 4 mil. .86. This is where my earlier idea of the jig would be good. Something to actually hold it at 86. Okay, I've got my jig. I measure 86, and on the line here where where that bit is, 87. I'm not trusting my clamp, so this is going to become a permanent jig. 86, 87. And just judging roughly how much of a angle we have in each, and say over the whole length of the wood, that's 1.5 millimeters. And that's about the same. Okay, so given that we started with a squared line and we went off 0.5 millimeter each way, and sort of stayed close to that, that's helping us to get that right. Okay, now what I can do is I can have this set in here, and I can know that if it's pushed out to those edges, that it's going to be the right size to fit. We'll start out with a trial fit of our template. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. These little extender tips are really nice for working with the CA, especially the thin stuff. Just stick it right onto the end there. Yeah, well down in place. Now it stays put. And that can just simply get tucked underneath the cap, like so. Okay, the idea of this is to be able to reach in there and hold it. So I'm a little bit off on the top bit. And I got a little bit of a gap over here. That looks good over there. Okay, if that's right, then I need a little bit more down on the bottom, but the bottom isn't going to hook onto anything, so that's not really an issue. And what I'm looking at now is, does this have the right natural shape with just simply the bottoms pushed in? And I'd say it does. So we've got a little bit of an issue up in here that needs to grow a little bit. And I'm just trying to sketch the thickness that I need to add. It's not easy. I'd give myself a little bit of an idea how much to add. Going around there. Okay. And I'd say it actually needs a little bit more over here too. From there to there. Well, I'm going to use that to give it a try and see what happens. I've used a jigsaw to cut just a little bit larger than what I need. I've verified that it is a little bit too big all around, and so now I'm going to use the sandpaper to get in closer to what we want. As we're getting close, I put my paper template back onto it, just remembering that I needed a bit extra here, a tiny bit extra there. I've recut the thing up at the top, but that helps me to get a little bit more honed in. And of course, finally we will use the actual piece that it's going into, but it can't really do much until it gets closer. I put a little mark right here where my fingernail is, that I know that that's where it starts to open up a bit. Okay. I have marked our little template front to match the front there, making sure that we work on the right side and don't do it back to front. I know that metal files are made for metal, but sometimes you just need a nice sharp corner. Okay, so we're getting there. I got carried away a little bit on the corners down there in the bottom, but that's okay. We'll add some little bits in there and get this positioned to where I can tack it in place with a CA. It can be just a tiny bit inside from the edge, but it can't stick out proud at all. Okay, I'm going to go with that. I'm going to tack it in place with a thin CA, and then I'm going to use the medium CA on the inside as a bit of a filler. Definitely need some over there. Just at least get it in position. I'll go ahead and get some of the medium on there now as well. Okay, so I've had a trial fit and it's looking good as far as perfect width up there. That's pretty well. Got the back where it needs to be as well, but the back still needs some reinforcing. Now with the back bit, what I'm thinking is I'll start out with my same template. That's the front of the front piece. I kind of suspected it would be very similar. I think there's nothing wrong with having it basically vertical. Well, actually, we need something back here to put the pin into, but that doesn't need to be the whole thing. It could just be a block in there. So basically the same thing, only it's a little bit deeper. Okay, so I want to go 3 or 4 mils extra on the bottom and not cut the notches in yet, but the basic profile I think will work. Well, that very tricky part of the job is done. We got those in there, and that fits in there just absolutely beautifully. So no problem at all. So now we just need to get the pins in here. Probably put some reinforcing behind the pins to help keep them solid. And then we need to put a bit of timber in here. Probably use some pine again in there for the pin to go into. I have thought about maybe having a plastic edge on it just so that that doesn't dig into the timber and so that it pops into place where it needs to. So those will be the next 2 things that we do. Well, this is what we're using for pins. So basically cut out little pieces on a plywood. We measured down and measured down to where the edge of this bulkhead is at the top. We're trying to get it just under that. We marked where they're going to be. And then we've marked it on here. I've found that to get a nice tight fit, I've had to snug them up a little bit higher. So if I was doing this over again, I think I'd purposely make them a little bit too high, and then I just sand them down to get them to where they're going to fit the best. But this is going to work out fine. I get it in place. You know, it doesn't lift up at all. I wouldn't call it tight. But the other thing I can do is just add a little something under the top there. A little piece of felt or something like that. So we're going to zap those in place, and then we'll make the block for this thing to go into. So I've got little pegs on the front. They fit in nicely. It does provide us a little bit of side-to-side movement up there, not much. I'm thinking this pin will take care of most of that, but if need be, we can add 2 little balsa blocks on each side of where those pins go to further secure it. Now, locating this pin, I started out by drawing a line down the block, and then I measured down from the outside of the surface to the pin. I poked a hole in the tape and then stuck the tape on. And now what I'm doing is trying to feel whether or not it's gotten into that hole. It certainly feels like it's gripped onto something. I really like to be more certain about that. Okay, I'm going to try something different. Got some white acrylic gesso, and it's anybody's guess as to what gesso is. I don't know why it's not just paint. But gesso is gesso. Okay. Pull that all the way in. Get this guy exactly in place. Like that up, all the way in. Voila! White gesso right on our little hole. Just keep on guessing and you can come up with something. Thank you, white gesso. You're a lifesaver. Okay, I'm going to now mark some crosshairs on that for helping me with the drilling. Okay, this drill is just slightly larger than our pin there. And not that we really have to have it more precise. Okay, farther down. Okay, let's see what that does. By the way, I've used hardwood here. This is a decking hardwood. Okay, so that pops all the way in there. Beautiful. Couldn't ask for anything better. Okay, get it off. Get it on. Try to shake it off. No, nothing's going to work. I think too, as it gets covering over it, that's going to tighten things up a bit. So we'll see what happens with that. Now I'm wanting to skinny up the bulkheads in there for the ESC. And you know, I think about using the file, but that doesn't take off very much material. So I've got some heavy sandpaper here, and I'm wrapping it around the file. This is Jim's special tool number A349. Yeah, we just innovate. You know, when we need something, we think about what do we got and what can we make do, and what's going to accomplish our purposes. That holds the sandpaper on there, and now we can sand away. Oh, okay. Let's come off the end. Well, it'll be difficult, will you? We can handle that. Good old common stapler. Okay, one to end stop. and away we sand. Okay, that has now given us a nice narrow bit here. I just brought it down. It's still, you know, roughly equivalent to where the old, the width of the old bulkhead was on the side. So it'll certainly be plenty strong. And you can see it way skinnier than what this one is over here. And then we had a little bit down here that was sticking out, and we just tapered that in to maintain the strength that is needed and minimize what's going to get in the way of the ESC. So I still got to put these stringers in down here. Got a few other reinforcing bits, so maybe we'll do that next. Okay, I just got, where do we start? Started up here, got the little reinforcing bits in the join down there in the corner. Here we had built in this reinforcing piece here, so now I've just added a bit behind that. And this here is just thicker material than what that is, so that'll be sanded down to make that even. Okay, so I got that in there. This had been broken here, so what I'm doing there is I've got myself a little block of wood, wrapped it in greaseless paper, baking paper. Let's see, where are we? Which side are we doing? Guess I'm doing the outside bit there. So I'm getting this in behind it. I need the square edge. That's the square edge. Okay, that's going to go up against that. I'm getting this in position first to where I know I can really clamp good with that. I want to make sure that this is absolutely straight going across here. So that piece of wood back there is going to do that. I've cut this little piece here that now I'm going to insert into there. Okay, making sure it's up in all of the way. Yep. Fiddly bits. Okay. So that's quite firm now. So I'm holding that up in there, and that's nice and squared. And so now we get our thin CA, and I zap some along there. Being careful to keep my fingers away from the place where the break is, because that stuff will find any sort of crevices to soak up into, including the gap between your finger and the plane. This one deserves a bit of a comment. I had cut this angle here to, there's a bulkhead coming up this way and a stringer going back that way, so I cut it like that to run across those angles. But I got looking at the grain and it's going that way. And I got looking at the brake, and the brake is that way. So there's not an awful lot of difference between the grain and the thing. We want the grain going crosswise across any potential brake. So what I really want, what do I want? I want something like that. And maybe I will add something more in here, because that also broke across there, so it does need some vertical grain in there. I think we're going to do a two-piece bit here. I'm going to have one small piece up here going across that grain there, and then another vertical piece across here. RC Jim's patented thumb guard. Sometimes you got to hold a piece in place and you just can't do it. But I've got this piece ready to go in here, and I need to put pressure on it and hold it and get glue on it at the same time. So thumb guard plus finger cover ought to do it. Okay, and now we can add in a little bit more. So that's kind of hard to see in there, but I've got the piece down the bottom with the grain going that way. Got this piece up here with the grain going that way. It's got a diagonal connection between them. That diagonal goes this way. So you got the, well, you can see the end of the piece there coming up, coming across that bit, and this bit going down across it that way. They overlap over top of this thing. So I'm quite pleased with that. I think that's quite all right. Well, here we are with a completed fuselage. We've got all of our bits and pieces in there. We got special reinforcing bits here and there, and various places that needed to be tricked up. Got our latch. We got our hatch cover. Yeah, it clips in place. So yeah, we've done well. So I appreciate your coming along with me for this part of the journey, but there's an exciting bit yet to come. Whoa! What are we going to do with this? Okay. Well, we do have a spare wing that was also damaged in a previous crash by the previous owner. He gave me that, and I think that might be in better shape than this one. But whatever the case is, we got some major repair to do on a wing. So, hey, make sure that you subscribed. Click that little circle over there. And keep watching, and we'll keep on having fun with our fixing. I'm RC Jim signing off. You have a great day and enjoy your flying.